Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Arthur, and I'm a marketing intern for the Developer Initiative here at Oracle. Thank you for joining us today at Oracle Cloud Coaching, Analytics Cloud for Developers. We're excited to be able to share with you how Oracle Analytics Cloud allows you to quickly make use of your data by creating dashboards and reports with simple, built-in data transformation and machine learning tools geared towards line of business users. Today's webcast will be presented by Sally Nguyen, Staff Cloud Engineer, and Tony Carrasco, Associate Cloud Engineer. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Sally.
Hey everyone, this is Sally. So thank you, Taylor, for a brief introduction for what OAC is. But for OAC, what we think of is analytics, right? And so when we think of analytics and OAC together, we actually have a comprehensive analytics tool. So it's a suite of products that powers an organization's analytics strategy at any scale and securely in any environment, on-premise or desktop, that is offered. And what you can do is look at governed analytics, which is more focused on business intelligence, or you can focus on self-service analytics, which is more on the DV reporting, data visualization side, and also leverage augmented analytics, which is OAC machine learning, data enrichment, etc. So all of these are in combination a part of OAC. So when we look at the actual process of getting from point A to point B, which is point A connecting to a data source, and then point B is actually consuming the data and actually looking at the reports, we start off with connectivity. So all of these listed are supported data sources for OAC. And once you get started with connecting to your data source, regardless if it's one of these connections, data sources, or if you use a flat file, you go through a preparation phase. And in the preparation phase, you'll start seeing suggestions from OAC. So OAC has a built-in engine behind the scenes that allows you to transform your data, mask your data, and also have some insights provided by OAC so that you could expand or extend the data set that you have now and get into modeling and exploring. And then at the final phase where you're done prepping your data set, you could consume, which is build your dashboards, your reports, and then start sharing. So before we get into the data preparation phase, or looking at the data set process, data preparation process for our data sets, we're just going through some of the examples of how it looks like in OAC. So smart data preparation is in OAC, you'll start seeing preparation scripts on the side, which are the actions that you apply to your data set. The data preparation phase also includes quality insights from each column. So OAC is able to identify, for example, null data. If you have null records, then it will display in the quality insight so that you can improve on the data set that you will report off of. And any incorrect or bad forming columns will be displayed here. So that way, when you get to the final phase of reporting, you have the highest quality of data set so that during reporting, it improves accuracy and also the experience of analyzing your data. And on the right-hand side, you'll see recommendations. And these recommendations are called data enrichments. And a popular data enrichment is, for example, you have a date column or time column and you want to extract a specific data from it. So for example, birth date, you want to extract month from your birth date. This will show in the recommendation pane, and you could easily create additional columns in your data set for you to use. OAC also offers NLG. So Oracle Analytics Cloud has an NLG engine behind the scenes. And This is a narrative language generation engine to describe data insights from your data sets. So currently we support 28 different languages, and this feature works well if you're suffering from empty canvas syndrome. So if you happen to have some data sets you have in mind that you want to report off of, and you come into OAC and you want to do ad hoc analysis, all you have to do is ask OAC or tell OAC what you want to know, and you'll start seeing different tokens, and these tokens are from your data set that is indexed. So OAC will generate visualizations built off on the questions that you ask OAC. So now I think it's better for me to show you guys how it works in real life in action. So I have a data set regarding cryptocurrency, for example, and I want to know the average blocks mined by mining pool. So you'll start seeing these tokens, and if you hover over each token, you'll see where the column is being referenced from. So in this case, there is a data set called hash rate by mining pools, and the column is block mines. So all I have to do is do a shift enter, or just click on the option for me to include all of my columns here. And then you'll start seeing different visualizations built. Again, this is from a data set that's indexed, and we can index any data set that is a flat file or that are from our catalog or from databases, as long as OAC knows that where to look and it scans the object, we're able to build visualizations and insights from here. And we can build visualizations and change it on the fly. So just in case if I want to change this into a table, and I can already go ahead and get started by clicking that icon to export it into a canvas. And if I want to build on top of this, I can just go ahead and change the columns and just get started. So this is what I've mentioned before is the natural language queries and narrative slide. So this is a good feature for anybody who just wants to ask questions, who doesn't know how to get started, but wants an idea of how to build visualizations from a specific data set that they have in mind, or multiple data sets they have in mind that goes together. So the process that we outlined before, let me go back here. So we already went through the exploration phase. Now I'm going back to the first 3 phases of our analytics platform, where we start to connect, prepare, and model the data to give you an insight of how that process looks like in OAC. So to get out of here, for example, we have a connection to ADW, and we want to build on that connection. There's some data in there that we want to start visualizing. We also have data sets from flat files. So first, there is an option to create a connection. And since we already have a connection to ADW, this would be our connection. In ADW, all we have to do is provide the credentials, make sure OAC can communicate to that data source, and after we are able to create a connection, it will be listed under the connection page. And from connections, we'll have to create a data set. So you'll see all of our different schemas here. And in this case, we're using villager siting. We have a data set called a table called villager siting. And this is where we saw some data quality insights. And after we create our data set from our connection, this is where we can improve on the data set. If there were null values, for example, we can replace it when we start modeling the data. And it's a pretty seamless process where we make the connection and we're automatically transitioned to creating a data set and preparing our data set. So here we have some scripts that we can apply. For example, if I want every timestamp, this one is indicated by a text column, but I want to change it to a date column. I could do it by just one click. And as you can see, there's some options for us here to either create an additional column split. So many options for us to transform different columns based off on what type it is. So OAC understands that this might be a date. And so it suggests that we can transform that attribute column with the text data type to a date time data type. And we can also change the source formatting to whatever custom formatting that we want. You'll see some data enrichment suggestions here on the right-hand side where I can extract parts from a timestamp. So if I convert it to a date, I said add step, you'll start seeing some steps applied. These are the scripts that are applied to our data set. And if I want to have different enrichments here, for example, if I change it back here. All right. I can expand on this and extract parts from my timestamp. For example, I want to extract part 1 from my timestamp. It will extract just the 7 before the slash, so it will detect it as a delimiter. So there's specific enrichment suggestions on your data set that you can apply so that when you start reporting, you get the data set you want to see. That makes it easier for you to start modeling the data further, or you want to build on your visualizations with clean data in the way that the report developer sees it. So once we're able to prep our data and we have all of our data sets created, this is where we can start playing around with visualizations. So we've built a visualization called Villager Analysis, and it's based off on Animal Crossing, which is pretty much our favorite thing to do when quarantine started. So what we did was already went through our connection, created data set from our connections. We also uploaded different flat files for us to use as data set as well. So we're basically extending dimensions from our data set, and OAC automatically picks up the columns that could be matched. So in this case, OAC calls it blending data, but we're extending a dimension to join these two data sets together. And OAC automatically does it by a similar column name, but if your name is different, for example, in my data set, one is called name, but it's equivalent to villager. They both have villager names. And then for my other data set, I have file name, which is a unique identifier, which is the same or equivalent to villager ID. We could just join them together, and we also have an option to add facts. So if we add another match, we could add facts if we have any. So OAC automatically does this again by a similar column name. However, if you don't have column name, you can also just go into the data diagram and merge it together or blend it together. So all of this visualization is built on 3 different data sets. All have different types of columns. They don't have to be the same, but however, there's a similar column that has data that is the same, like villager ID and villager name. And so once we're able to prep our data and we're able to blend our data, we have different options. We could create an ad hoc analysis. For example, I want to have a name, species, personality column, and OAC has suggestions for you. You don't have to know the exact visualization type. You can just say create best visualization and OAC will create it for you. And here you can start off with the OAC visualization, or you can just start choosing which one that you know once you already have an idea of where you can get started. You can also create calculations based off on other columns here. So calculations on the fly. For example, I have a count column here already created. And if I edit calculation, I'm basically counting each row. So you don't have to have it built in your data set. This is all a part of the OAC ad hoc advantage, where any report user could come in, and if they have access to create analysis or permissions to create analysis, they can go ahead and build visualizations and calculations and prep their data without having intervention for DBAs or report developers or admins to create them for them. So as long as they have the data set, they have an idea, they can easily come in, select columns that they want to start visualizing, and then create their calculations and start building canvases. So OAC also offers a feature called Explain, and it's essentially a way for you to get a better idea of what type of data that you're working with. So for example, I want to explain personality. OAC will pick up these 4 metrics. So you can start off with basic facts of what personality is. There's also key drivers for personality, and OAC has some aggregations. For example, it's just basing it off on row count, but they'll pick up the 7 attributes and all of the other combinations of columns that they can pull in, which is hobby, gender, style, birthday month, etc. There's also segments. So 391 records are the count of villagers. Every villager is unique. And there's also segments based off on personality. And so there's ways for you to kind of figure out what kind of data set are you dealing with, what each column means if you don't know exactly what they mean. And not every column, for example, this column doesn't have any data. It might be because each name is unique. So it depends. It already picks up which column is relevant and which one might not be useful for you. So in this case, I might want to have a key driver for styles and personalities, or hobbies and personalities. You'll notice that there's a check mark in the top right corner, and you can just select that, whichever one. I'll do it by gender and say add selected. And it'll create a canvas named Explain Personality based on what you saw before in the Explain feature, Explain page. And you can create analysis based off on the insights that OAC generated. So that's another quick way for you to get started. We've already built some visualizations here where we have some tiles, some category visualizations. All of these have different options for you. You can change it, easily change which visualization that you want to see. These are the ones that are out of the box for OAC. However, there are extensions that you can apply to OAC. They call plugins, where you can upload and increase or have more options for you to start visualizing. So you don't have to use the out of the box. There's some in Oracle library for you to have. And these are just some examples using the out of the box visualizations. So once you have your visualizations, you can apply filters. You can add more calculations, and these filters, you can modify the filter. You can have expression filters that are not typically included in the visualization when you just drag over a column. You can apply it here, and you can do sorts. So once you're finished with your visualization, there's an option called narrate. It's basically a presentation. So you can drag every visualization over that you want to share. And once you're ready to present or narrate, you have an option to just share the URL, share the DVA, the actual file, and others will be ready to consume. So this is if you want to share it for a finished product for another user that also has access to DV, or if you want to embed it in other sites, you can do that as well. If you don't want to share it, but you want to have everyone in OAC be able to collaborate on a project or have access to a data set, you can do so. There is an option to inspect. And again, this one here is by indexing. This is how OAC generates the natural language generation. So it's scanning all of the objects in the data set for anyone to create visualizations, or if you want other users to use the same data set, then you can share it at the access level. And this is pertaining to data set, but this can apply to other visualizations as well. Like this visualization is built by my teammate, Tony. And if I want to access that visualization, all he has to do is share it with me, either by the application role level or by user level. And I'm able to create or expand on this data set or replicate it. So we touched a bit about the natural language, but there's also machine learning, OAC machine learning. And Tony did a good job with building some machine learning data flows. And so what I'm going to do is hand it over to him.
All right, so today I just want to talk to you a bit about the machine learning capabilities that are in OAC. We'll go ahead and start with that. So within OAC, you can train models on historical data and then apply those machine learning models to your raw data. There's also forecasting, where you can say you have historical revenue. You can also go ahead and get a forecast for the next few months or years, depending on your data. And we also have sentiment analysis, where you can look at textual data and you can see what is the sort of emotion of that data. There's also the ability to function shift execution to Oracle database. So for certain things, we can actually create a data flow which will offload some machine learning type work to the database. So for example, we can do tokenization on the database. So say we have a column of text, excuse me, and we want to know what the most important word is in that box of text. We can go ahead and do a database function which will give us that data set. And I just want to briefly show off some of OAC's machine learning capabilities. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and go into OAC. So this is the visualization that Sally was just showing you. This is created using sentiment analysis. So in this case, we have reviews of the game, and we have reviews of another popular game. And we want to process these sort of raw reviews and give them an emotional component. So whether or not these reviews are positive, negative, or neutral. And then we want to display that data. So first I'm going to show off the data here. And then we can go ahead and show how I built this machine learning sentiment analysis model. So here we can see we have just sort of the reviews themselves, and we have the emotion, negative, neutral, or positive. We have the sort of count of reviews. So here we have, we can see how many of the reviews were positive versus how many were negative and how many were neutral, the total number of reviews. And here we can see those reviews over time. So we can see that shortly after the game came out, there was a huge spike both in reviews and in positive reviews. And then those quickly dropped off, whereas here we can see maybe a more standard release. We can see that this game had spikes and valleys over time. So we can start thinking about like, why did this have a sudden spike of reviews and positive reviews? And we can probably surmise that this was because it was started at the start of the pandemic and lockdown. Everyone was going out and buying a Switch and buying this game. So we can assume that that was probably the cause for the sudden spike in good reviews. And now I want to show you how we would get this information from our sort of raw data set. So first we start with our reviews of the game. So here we have just a file that's just the raw reviews of the data. Excuse me, it's a data set of just raw reviews of the game. In this case, it was scraped from Twitter. Let me search for it. Drag this in. So here we have so we have the grade that people gave the game. We have the person who gave the review, and here we have the actual review that they wrote. And so we can see that we have all this raw text, but we don't really, it doesn't really mean anything to us unless we kind of know what's in that text. And at the same time, it would take a long time to go through and review each one of these text boxes manually and to read all this text. So instead, we can go ahead and train a machine learning sentiment analysis model on it. This will give us a very quick overview of what this text is about. So in order to train a machine learning model, we want to go to, we want to create a data flow and add our data set to it. And so this is kind of my finished data flow. I'll kind of go through it. So here we have the Animal Crossing reviews data set. So this is our raw data. Now we want to select columns which are relevant to our what we're trying to predict. So this because I just got rid of the grade that they gave it. We want to go to use an analyze sentiment model. So this will generate one column, which is the emotion. And we want to input our column to analyze, which in this case is text. And so for sentiment analysis is pretty simple. That's just sort of the parameters for sentiment analysis. And then we would save this data as a new data set. And so this data set would contain that additional column, which is the emotion. So once we have this set up, we can go ahead and run this. And that'll take, depending on the size of your data set, it could take a minute or two. And this will give us a new data set to do visualizations on. So let me go ahead and go back to my project here. So here we can look at our process reviews. So we have all the same information that we had, but the model has also added this extra column, which gives us the emotion of the user. So in this case, our three choices are positive, negative, and neutral. And so we can see that each of these texts has been given one of these grades, either positive, negative, or neutral. And I've done the same thing to a series of reviews for another game, Clash of Clans. So here we have reviews for these two popular games, and then we can go ahead and compare the reviews for these two games over time. And so this can also be done for any sort of like product reviews, or maybe you have like exit surveys for employees or customers, and you want to know what their overall experience was. This is a way to process that very quickly. Now, OAC can also do predictive analytics. So say we want to, we have historical data and we want to know something about future data. So in this case, so in Animal Crossing, we have, you have a certain chance of new villagers coming to your island. And so we wanted to create a predictive model which would predict, based on historical conditions, what the next villager to your island might be. So that's sort of the premise for this chart. This is the finished product. So we have some historical data. Or in this case, this would be sort of our current state on our island. Here we have the actual villager who appeared versus the predicted. And then we also get a confidence for that prediction. So we can see that this This is not maybe the most accurate, but we can do many different iterations with OAC's machine learning models. Let's go ahead and go into how we built this model and improvements that we can make. So in order to create a predictive model like that, you're going to want to have a trained data set and a testing data set. So what you want to do is train your model on historical data, and then you can apply that model to your raw data that you're trying to learn about. So in this case, go ahead and go to our trained data set. So this data set has historical conditions and then what villager appeared. So we have just some various information about our island. We have like our spawn type, our current residents, what residents we've had in the past. And then we also have what villager appeared. Now for machine learning, you only want to select columns relevant to your machine learning. You don't want to leave a lot of other columns that shouldn't affect your machine learning, but that could throw it off in some way. So we'll try to clean up our data set. Then we're going to train, in this case, a multi-classifier. So we have many different villagers that can spawn. So each of those are kind of like one of the choices. So we'll train a multi-classifier, which is going to try and make each of our rows in our raw data set. It's going to try and assign one of those choices to it. And so in these machine learning models, you always want to pick your target column, which in this case is villager. And for this, we're going to go ahead and leave everything the same. This is just kind of how the data is encoded and how it deals with nulls and a few parameters for the models and things like that. And one of the nice things about OAC is that there's multiple models available for each of these different types of machine learning. So if the first model is not very accurate, you can tweak that model, or you can try many different models very quickly, kind of see which model works the best for your data. So we're going to go ahead and train this model on that trained data set. This will give us a model which we can then apply to our raw data. So this will create that model by running this data flow. And I've already run it, but usually that takes just a few minutes to train your model. Then we can actually go ahead and look at the model that it created. So in this case, we have our villager sighting model. We can inspect it. And here we can look at the quality of our model. So this will tell us a little bit about false positives, the hits and misses of our model. In this case, there's quite a few different values that the model could have predicted. This is a pretty large data set. But here we can see that we've had some hits here and there, but overall this model was not the most accurate. And that's something we can see using our confusion matrix here. So we can see the hits, and we can also see the misses. Here we have some more statistical data about our model. So once we have our model, we would create another data flow. We can go back to data. So once we have our model, we want to take our testing data set, which will be something like, say you have all the conditions for your current island or sets of islands, and you want to know what the next villager to appear would be. So you have that data set, and you can apply that model to it, and then save that data as a new data set with the villager that the model thinks is going to appear. So in this case, we ran it on one part of our other data set. So we already have the villager that's going to appear, and we can compare the villager that does appear versus what the model thinks is going to appear. So we go ahead and apply our model. This will generate two new columns, and this will be the predicted value, which in this case is the predicted villager, and the confidence, which is sort of the confidence the model has that that prediction is correct. And then we can go ahead and save that data as a new data set. And so this will be a new data set which has the villager that's predicted to appear and that confidence interval. So let me go back to our project. So this project is created off of that data set right here. And so this has the some of our historical data, sort of our current island conditions. We have the villager which did appear given these conditions, and then we have our predicted villager. And we have an aggregate confidence level. So we can see that our model needs some work, but that's one of the nice things about OAC is that it doesn't take very long to train a model. So you can quickly apply multiple different models to your data set and see which ones works best for you. And so that's what I had on machine learning. Now I want to talk a bit about the embedding process. So just to real quickly give you an overview of it. So the DV side of things gives you these scripts under the developer tab. And this is to kind of get you a quick started with embedding your visualizations in other media and websites. So we'll go ahead and give you this script, which can work in Oracle's JET framework, which is sort of like to help with mobile app development, or it works in standard HTML. It uses the knockout.js script. So this is two-way binding, so you can actually interact with your DV wherever it's embedded. So you can do the filters and things like that. You can have a little bit of interaction with your visualizations. And it uses the HTML API Oracle DV tag. So this Oracle DV can be put on your web page wherever you'd like the visualization to appear. And I'll go ahead and show you how to set that up. So let me go ahead and go back to my home page. So the first thing you want to do, whatever you're going to, like whatever site you're going to embed your analytics in, you're going to have to make that site a safe domain so that it has permission to access the analytics. So in this case, we're going to embed the analytics in an Apex app. So for those purposes, we want to have the URL of our Apex app here. And we're going to whitelist that. You can also control which information you want to share from OAC into your application, excuse me, into your website or your domain. So in this case, we have everything checked, but you can pick on a case-by-case basis what exactly your site needs access to. And once we have that whitelisted, let's go ahead and go to one of our visualizations. Let's go ahead and go to villager analysis. So you can see this is a very nice looking visualization. If you want to go to developer, here we can go to the embed tab. So this will give us the script that the page needs to run before it gets to our visualizations in order to display them. And then we also have the code where we can actually embed our visualizations. And here we can actually we can embed the default page of the visualization, or we can actually embed it on a tab by tab or canvas by canvas basis. And so we're going to need to copy this information to our web page. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. So in this case, we're using Apex, and so this is kind of the it's an Apex development page. So the first thing we want to do in the first part of the page, it'll ask you if you want to run any scripts when the page first starts up. And so we're going to provide the file URL to our JavaScript, which was provided by our dev tab in OAC. So this page will run when the page starts up. And then we can embed our different canvases in different parts of the page. So in this case, I put them inside of a dev element so you can control a bit of the style. And here we have one of our canvases. And in each of these different regions, we have a different one of our canvases. And if I run this, and in this case, I'm already logged in, but if you're not logged in, it'll ask you to log into your OAC in the page, or you can actually authenticate using IDCS in Apex, which is a bit more complicated, but that's one possibility. So here we have the different OAC regions, and here we have each of our embedded visualizations. So we can see here's the first one, and we can see that the drop-down menus still work. So say we want to know just the information about alligators, we can do that. We can see there's 7 total villagers who are alligators with 5 different personalities between them. Here we can also do the sort of slicing and dicing with species and personality. So we want to know only about the bear species and then only about cranky. We can do that. So all this functionality is retained on our embedded page. And so that's what I wanted to show you about sort of both the machine learning and the embedding parts of this and embedding in Apex. Now I think I'm ready to hand it off.
Thank you, Sally and Tony, for the presentation. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to provide some brief information on what cloud coaching is and how to request your own cloud coach. If you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. If you're experiencing a roadblock that isn't serious enough to warrant a service request, or maybe you just purchased OCI and are looking for an additional onboarding session, Cloud Coaching Clinics pair you one-on-one with a cloud engineer to assist you on your cloud journey. We offer workshops and demos for deeper dives on a particular service, provide sample code, and provision/configuration services. Please visit the link on this slide to sign up, and I will also provide it in the chat now. If you enjoyed today's session, you can sign up for next month's cloud coaching session on infrastructure monitoring and management. Also, here are links to other developer events, your trial again, and we'd love to hear any feedback you may have. Feel free to send us any questions about today's session, suggestions about future topics you'd like for us to cover, or how to request your own cloud coach at cloudcoach_us_grp@oracle.com. I'd like to say thank you to Sally and Tony again for this great presentation. And thank you to you all for spending your time with us today. Have a great day, and we hope to see you all next time.